everyone for joining. This month's webinar is, I think I keep people there. This month's webinar is Artificial Intelligence Impact on Financial Services Search. This came about due to the fact that some work that we've been doing with some of our clients, we noticed, as we do, and me being a particular geek in the area, whenever a new AI was coming out, whether it be the Rabbit R1 or ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or any of those, and the first thing I would do is type in, where should I get my car insurance? Because that's the kind of loser I am. And so the results we started seeing were very different, or often very different from what we were seeing elsewhere. And I won't bury the lead here because we were lucky enough to have Similarweb here and Richard Robertson with us to go into a lot more detail about that. But it was enough for us to go, well, hold on, is there something here? But we can't prove statistical significance. And so we said, well, who do we know that has access to vast amounts of data processing capabilities and data on the market? And of course, that was Similarweb. And hence, in our conversations, we said, we think we've got something here. And they went and did a lot of the legwork in investigating us for us. The results of that we'll cover today and what we can do about it. Right. So yes, as said, your speakers are myself, co-founder of Balance, and of course, Richard Robertson is the AVP of EMEA in Similarweb. He'll speak in a minute. Very quickly about Balance, it's not a timeshare presentation. You don't need to hear all about us today, and you'll get the slides afterwards, but we're a performance marketing agency dedicated to financial services. It's all we work on, hence we get excited about nerdy stuff like what is AI doing to financial services search. We do all of these services, SEO, content, and the like, and you can see them all here. These are some of the brands we're fortunate to work with, and it's in working with a number of these that we started to see these variances. We'll talk a lot about insurance today, but actually we've noticed it across quite a few sectors in financial services, and we'll mention those other sectors as we go through. Over to you, Richard.
Fantastic. Alex, firstly, thank you for inviting me to join today. I'm super excited about what we're going to share. For those of you that don't know a little bit about Similarweb, at Similarweb, our vision is to create the most accurate and actionable digital data so that every business can win in its market. We do this by gathering unique and comprehensive data from around consumer behavior, shopper insights, websites, apps. This provides us and our customers with a unique view on the world. We're able to spot trends quickly, interpret those trends and the behaviors and actions and outcomes that come out of those really, really quickly. That helps us and our customers like you navigate the ever-changing digital market. There's a little bit of kind of who we work with. We work with thousands and thousands of brands globally, both very large and very small. We have a very strong financial services practice, so we work with 6 of the largest, 10 largest global banks globally, as well as many of the household name financial services businesses here in the UK and across Europe.
Okay, so today we've just done our introduction, really. Richard will cover the state of play, so what we found from the data, what Similarweb's analysis have found from the data and what's being presented in terms of results. Now, we'll talk through some very specific channel recommendations on how to react to these changes. And if we have time at the end, we'll do Q&A. There's a lot to pack in. I can stay around a little bit afterwards if you do, but pop your questions on the side. We won't answer them as we're going through. We'll try and address them at the end. If we don't get time, we'll follow up. Some definitions, clarifications, caveats. We'll talk a lot about ChatGPT here. The principles are the same, although the different LLMs, and again, we'll say LLM, large language model, all the same thing. When we talk about those things, even though they may all have their idiosyncrasies, they're all approaching things differently from the way that traditional search approaches things, the traditional algorithms, the keywords and link-based way of ranking things. AI's approach this differently. So just a clarification there. The other thing is we talk about insurance quite a bit, because if we covered every topic, we'd need a thing that lasted a week, which would be very interesting maybe for us, but maybe not for everyone else. That a lot of these principles are still very much true, and we've seen it. We've looked at it in other sectors for mortgage buying, lending, wealth management, particularly intermediated services where you use a broker or some form of aggregator. this is particularly pertinent. So although we look at insurance here, please don't think that it's not relevant to you. Things will be shuffling across the board. And on to Richard.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alex. So let's start with a well-known truth that consumer behaviors are changing, particularly in the way that they are interacting and finding brands to work with. And as for those looking even in the financial services sector, their changes are taking place there as well. If we go to somebody like Gartner, they're predicting a 25% decline in traditional search activity by 2026. And in fact, our data actually bears this true. So this is a 6-month view of keyword trends around car insurance. As Alex said, we're going to focus a little bit around the insurance sector. And what we're seeing is that there's a huge shift in where people are going to look for information. And this, particularly in financial services and in insurance, this is really interesting because just the volume of traffic, the volume of leads, and therefore the volume of sales that comes through traditional search is massive in this sector. So there are changes afoot. And if we look today at where those referring websites are going, where that traffic's going, we see that it's very, very heavily focused upon the aggregator market or the comparison website market. The winners in this market tend to be the likes of Money Supermarket, Go Compare the Market, those types of companies. But when we're saying that we're seeing a big drop in that search volume, where is that search going? And if that search is going elsewhere, who are going to be the winners and losers out of that? And this is why we wanted to look at AI in particular. So let's start with ChatGPT, which is obviously the most well-known of the AI platforms. And we're just seeing the rise of ChatGPT. It's hard to believe that it was only launched 2 years ago in November 2022. And today, our data is showing that it's the 8th most visited website by volume of visitors globally. So there's this huge transition of where people were looking for information, were trying to find out about companies, and where they're moving to today. But it's not just about ChatGPT. There are a number of players in the market that are looking at this. So we've got Google Gemini, we've got Claude, we've got Perplexity. And to provide some context, just Perplexity alone, which is the lowest level on this slide, they are receiving or processing somewhere in the region of 350 million queries per month. So there is this real transition. And in this context, we wanted to understand the GenAI, or how GenAI is changing and influencing consumer research behavior, and ultimately what that means for businesses like you. Due to our unique view on the digital world, Similarweb is able to track consumer behavior across millions of websites, including GenAI platforms. Taking advantage of this insight, our data labs team has run some really deep analysis across consumers' use of ChatGPT as it relates particularly to the car insurance market. We were able to capture and analyze thousands of consumers' queries submitted to this platform. The queries were things such as, what car insurance is best for new drivers? What car insurance should I have as I live in London? What's the best car insurance for my 10-year-old Volvo? So very much those top of funnel search terms were what we were looking at. And taking all these responses to these types of queries into account, we were able to create a list of brands that were recommended by the GenAI platforms to consumers. Similar to the way that a standard SERPs or search engine results page will have it, GenAI comes back with multiple brands and multiple reference points through their responses. And so what we did is we actually started to understand which brands were being mentioned, how frequently they were being mentioned. And from that, we were able to develop what we're calling a visibility scorecard, which enables us to really capture and rank how frequently those brands were being mentioned. And if I'm honest, the results were actually really quite interesting, certainly from our perspective. So if we go into this insurer visibility scorecard, what we can see here is that the brands themselves are winning for the visibility competition. with the likes of Direct Line, AXA, Aviva, Admiral, and so forth, really stealing the market share, and anywhere between kind of a third and a half of all queries are having these brands that come back to them. And this is quite different if we go back to that original slide I showed you around where traditional search drives people. It drives them to the comparison sites. As we see here, that visibility scorecard, then the aggregators are not anywhere near as present. Now, the other thing around GenAI is, and you'll notice this if you're using things like ChatGPT, there's a citation. So it actually tells you where they're sourcing the information from. And this is really, really important because we were able to look at those citations and understand where ChatGPT was pulling those sources from. And we feel that this is providing real insight into the way that search will be responded to moving forward. So these are the top 5 sites that were received the most citations during the query analysis that we did. Now, really interesting for me, you've got really heavy content sites such as The Independent, the Watchdog Group, Which, and even Reddit make it onto the list, which is, again, really fascinating and shows that there is a real shift in terms of where people are getting their information, where they're being fed that information from. You do notice there confused.com and newswitch.com appear in the top 5 list. And again, going back to that previous slide, they didn't appear in the top 5 or more providers from traditional research.
There's an interesting point here. So when with the actual 10 top citations included a bunch of the brands themselves. So Admiral was in there, AXA was in there, a couple of others, and we wanted this to be actionable. And obviously, if you're a competitor of theirs, you can't say, "Oh, Admiral, do you mind if you just mention our brand on your insurance website?" It's not a very practical approach. So we thought we'd talk about the publishers, as it were, and Confused, Uswitch. They're essentially publishers, stroke affiliates. What is quite interesting is Confused being there, and Confused might well be on the call. They won't when we say they're not the top price comparison brand in terms of traffic, in terms of maybe top of mind even, but they frequently kept appearing in results, and we'll see comparatively to others. The other one is Uswitch, and actually they're both part of the same company because perhaps there's a methodology approach there that's consistent. So yeah, those two appearing in there amongst the other publishers was particularly interesting and something to look at in deeper detail.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alex. And what we've got here is we've just got an example query that was one of the ones that we analysed, and the citation to show that where that's coming from. So again, I think Alex will roll into this in a little bit more detail, but understanding which sites are feeding into these results is super, super important for you and your brands as you move forward, because this is where an increasing proportion of the population are starting to get their information. And if we just move just one step further and again look at those price comparison sites and see kind of where they're coming up. We mentioned confused.com at the top there, but the top 3 that were in the traditional search results are actually around 30 or beyond in terms of the number of citations or places they're getting citations from. So again, there's a real shift in our minds. I mean, this is very early days, it's very early data, but there's a real shift in terms of where people are going to look for information and what that information entails. So what I wanted to do is just, I know I've gone through that quite quickly, but maybe just quickly summarize some of the key points that we're taking out of this. So first and foremost, we're seeing that downward trend in traditional search. I actually read something yesterday that even Google are noticing overall their search volumes going down. In the UK, I think they're reducing from 36% of the market share down to 86 down to about 83%. So there is a move. A good proportion of that is going to the GenAI platforms. And it's really interesting how they're capturing that and what they're doing with that. We're going to see new winners that are going to emerge from this. I don't mean net new players coming into the market, but I think it's going to rebalance that playing field that has been so traditionally strong, particularly for comparison sites. And as I said, I think we really need to understand as brands who and how we need to influence in our own strategy in terms of our own content, but also how we're being seen on, let's call them syndicated websites. And the impact of this is likely to grow. I recently did a quick test myself, and I went through searching for car insurance for my own personal use. And the tool I was actually using, Gemini, came back with prompting me not only about the brands, but would I like to go through that process through the GenAI platform? And I was getting down to the stage where I was providing information and they were fine-tuning the results for me and starting that process of actually buying it. So this is super early, but it's really, really interesting. And we're already starting to see some quite dramatic results of the change in consumer behavior. So I've given you the kind of overview around this. I think I'll pass back to Alex to help share some of the detail and what this means for you.
Thank you, Richard. Massively fascinating. So what does this mean for your strategy? So we're going to talk through a bunch of top tips here. Now, in each of these sections, we'll cover some channels. We'll cover what it potentially means and also what we could do about it. Each of those channels we'll really likely touch on because of this in the interest of time, but we do actually have separate webinars, particularly on EAT and content and on digital PR, should you want to look into this in further detail. So, what have you just said? This is a typical search page. I blurred it out for just because you don't name and shame anyone, right? But the top 2 results in Google, and I used to work in Google Compare, looking after SEO and performance. I worked in Admiral, so I know how hard won some of these positions are. Incredibly hard won. The top 2 results got between 2.5% of the equivalent AI mentions. The middle of the pack is your standard big brands that we all know and love. Right, or maybe not love, and then we got another one in the homepage there, 0% of results. So big shift for a homepage, and a lot of these are pretty static. They don't change a lot over the years. Now, take a typical person's journey at the moment. All right, so tend to, and this is the majority. Okay, there's a lot of direct traffic. There's a lot of affiliate traffic, although these are affiliates. But if you look at it, take most people start their journey on Bing, on Google. They get the renewal letter, or they have to buy insurance for the first time. They Google it first, then they end up at the top price comparison site. Sometimes, often that's Compare the Market. They have a huge dominance in car insurance, particularly anyway. They'll go from Compare the Market to an insurer, then they'll be with insurance. And as a colleague of mine who deals a lot with price comparison, they went, also then there's the renewal journey. So it almost starts again and they go back to price comparison when they get to renewal. That's pretty much standard journey. It covers a vast amount of the journeys that exist. Not all of them are new purchase, a lot of them renew with their insurer, but that's the general journey. What is happening and what will happen, and it'll only grow theoretically, is that yes, there's still a lot of people using search, and we'll talk about this a lot. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. A lot of people are going to be using Google and Bing, and as Richard mentioned, those that use Google may still be taking part in some form of GenAI, shades of Google Compare, if you're as old as me there, but they will be happening. But of course, you've got GenAI, which seems to be largely a little bit of still going to price comparison. Although, again, 15% of the traffic, I should have put an extra line, a little thin line there to price comparison. A lot of them are skipping it because from a GenAI's perspective, it's doing that thinking for you. The job that a price comparison website or an aggregator, or arguably a broker or other people like that, advisor is doing for you is absorbing all the intelligence of the experience or data and giving you results. GenAI is going, well, I've done all that, and this is who you should go to. And here's 5. So it's almost skipping that process for you. Equally, at renewal, the idea might be that at some point you get your renewal through in your email and you go, Siri, because we've got Apple Intelligence coming in, Siri, I'm worried my phone's going to kick off. Should I renew my insurance? So there is a potential bigger and bigger shift. Beyond traffic, there's a commercial implication here. Again, I'm just talking about insurance and lending risk here because I've worked in both areas. Traditionally, the big players will get the cream of the crop, okay? Most people shop in 1 or 2 price comparison websites at most. A lot of them are going to Compare the Market due to their vast investment in branding and marketing, and back in the day, Cuddly Toys, right? They go to there. If you get a good price because you're a good risk, you probably buy there and then, right? But if you don't, maybe you're less of a good risk. Maybe your pricing's gone up because you had an accident, something you've claimed the last few years. You'll go on to the next price comparison website and maybe even the next. And what you tend to see then is actually the quality and the risk ratio of each of those traffic declines as it goes through those brands. That has implications commercially in terms of negotiation. It has implications on all sorts of things. Of course, if GenAI is flipping the script there and maybe suggesting some of the lower brands as the first place to go, that actually changes the nature of their traffic, which in turn will change the commercial agreements that they have, and so on. So it's much deeper than just traffic here and the sky is falling kind of stuff. This has real commercial implications. Also, in terms of behavior. So what does it do to a typical query? Now, again, if you're as old as me, you'll remember when Alexa came in and everyone, including Amazon, particularly Amazon, were going, everyone's going to shop via Alexa now. Everyone will be buying their insurance via Alexa. No one did, right? Maybe three people did, all right? Because it's unnatural to do that. Of course, ChatGPT is not a huge leap from what we do or what we were already doing, hence the vast, rapid adoption. But no one types in car insurance into ChatGPT. It'd be like barking at someone in the street. You go, car insurance. Because ChatGPT will go, car insurance what? You know, you tend to have conversational queries, which we talked about for a long time, but people often don't do them. So that adds context, it adds natural language, it adds intent, which it can mean that you'll see certain types of content come up that wouldn't have happened before or necessarily had presence before, hence possibly explain some of this shuffle. So what does this lead to? So actually, Rand Fishkin, if you look, Rand Fishkin of SparkToro talked a lot about this, and I've quite happily referenced that. He talks about that the currency of search used to be, yes, followed links, but also keywords within English content, right? And that's still going to be very important. But backlinks and digital PR and outreach is going to be more crucial than ever, because the currency of AIs is its mentions of a brand across its training data, the spicy autocorrect, as it were, that they reference, which is if you, it'll go, the best place to get my car insurance is fill in gap, and it'll statistically choose the most frequently used word there. Now, if your brand is mentioned a lot across the web, this statistically is a bigger chance of you being used there. So therefore, backlinks and traffic across and presence, brand mentions across the web are going to be very, very critical. You know, working with publications to get into the best buy guides. Yes, it's stuff we've always done, but it's kind of almost ticking boxes. Now it becomes more and more crucial. That does not mean you start spamming or buying a ton of links. Please don't do that, because that'll just get you penalized. You know, some one-man band website maker says, I can get you 1,000 links. Don't do that, you know, because it's just going to end badly. So how do you get these backlinks and mentions? Now, obviously, it's a big part of digital PR, and I'll only likely touch upon it, but creating content that people are going to care about and feature on other sites, creating articles, first-party data to create good PR and interest stories is what you're going to have to do. Put stories that the journalists care about. And you see a lot of times people writing press releases and just banging them out on the wires. This is your typical journalist on the side here. They are so overwhelmed, so overworked, and so understaffed these days due to the pressures of what the web has done to journalists in environment that you have to stand out. You have to have unique stuff. You know, get to know your journalists, get to know what they tend to feature, and jump on industry news immediately. You know, if you're going to get your mentions out there, you need to be first to it. Utilize your data, your own first-party data, to create stories. And again, this is stuff that won't be on ChatGPT because it's unique. You know, ChatGPT can't create. So anything that you can do to create yourself, well, be absorbed by the AI's new information, which is what it's built for, but also will give journalists a reason to cover your story now. A good tool for some weird just happened there. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. A good tools are SparkToro, BuzzSumo, and of course Similarweb to search for key terms and also where those tools are being mentioned. So it's very small on the slide here, doing inside of the screen. But you look at where articles regarding your topic are being mentioned, and then you find out which publications talk about them. We mentioned The Independent earlier there, but there are lots of others. Find out where those sites are and pitch your stories to them directly, those journalists directly. You know, if you're doing it easy, don't do it. It won't work. All right. You've got to go in and put the effort in. Work with a digital PR agency, work with a PR agency, or use your PR team to do that. An interesting one is Reddit. So Reddit had a relationship with ChatGPT. So they've given them license to use the data. You'll notice Reddit queries coming up a lot. Now, Reddit's been around for a long, long time, but I never did a lot with it, if I'm honest, until recent years. But it's definitely going to be used more and more and more. Now, it's easy to just like we think, we're almost bad about our own industry. No one talks about my thing down the pub. No one talks about financial service down the pub. First of all, they do, but also they do on these large communities, So maybe just get yourself set up. You don't have to jump in with both feet. Get yourself set up. Make sure you're engaged with Reddit and understanding what's being talked about on there, because it's going to be referenced more and more. This is actually from Reddit themselves. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time in it, but just take investment. A lot in /UK personal finances, a lot in r/, that's how they work there, financial planning. Loads and loads of information on there. 1 in 3 UK Redditors have made an investment decision based on information found on Reddit. And this source is GWI, not Reddit themselves, because of course they'd say that, right? This is GWI data, which we have access to GWI data ourselves, and we use it extensively. It's a channel to consider. We actually tried to ratify, see if the theories are correct, that independent being such a big citation source was due to the amount of mentions on the independent. And therefore, is that why certain brands are coming up highly? It's actually a really mucky thing. So I put it here to go, we're not experts in this. And anyone tells you you're an expert in AI is talking nonsense. But unless they actually work for someone like OpenAI. So what we're doing is trying to all the time experiment about what things are going to influence these results. So we looked on the independent and looked at mentions of direct line. There were 3,100 pages mentioned direct line. We had to do plus insurance because otherwise it gets quite mucky. So that makes sense, right? Lots of mentions. But then AXA were there. They actually had relatively low mentions, 40% of references. So obviously that's due to something else. Aviva, again, lots of references, high reference point. That makes sense. LV, again, these are all the brands you see on the homepage. But then you take Admiral, actually, surprisingly few pages. And actually, it was very hard to pick out Admiral because you had to discount a lot because Admiral means lots of things, not just an insurance company. So you had to really narrow it down. But Admiral was also, if you remember, one of the citation sources. So perhaps if your own content is, we know if your own content is strong enough, just like it was with SEO, the AI will reference it from your own site and therefore make you. So it's still just as important to have fantastic, rich content on your site. You also see brands that haven't invested strongly in content. You take Aegeus, you take eShore. There's not a huge amount of content on eShore's site. Hastings Direct and Churchill, they've all very much leaned into being price comparison fed. I don't think it's unfair to say. And as a result, they don't have a lot of rich content and they're not getting referenced a lot. So there we go. So content marketing in the age of AI. There's a lot of text on this page, but basically we talked about EAT, right? EAT, and particularly the element of EAT, which is authority, the A, topical authority, and aligning your brand against core offerings is going to be searched for. So it's still really, really important. We talk a lot about this only a month ago, so a lot of you might have been in that webinar. But content quality, unique content is still very, very important. The stuff that's on your site, not just mentions out there, is still going to be just as critical. So don't slack on that. It's still going to be very critical for you. The other thing that's happening, so we've talked about some giants maybe falling. You've also get content, the brands that maybe aren't in the top 5 suddenly coming up. And also content that was quite niche before and maybe never really came up in any searches because it was a long tail and no one really typed in that long tail. So we've got a result here from actually one of our clients, which is a very niche, long tail piece of content that was for his very specific audience, possibly never even really intended to rank, most to be there as a reference point, being used in the AI overviews because it's so correctly came out of nowhere. We saw the traffic spiking and we go, why is the traffic spiking? Looked at the references and it was this. It was this is one of our clients, Allianz. But how is inflation affecting business? And it was a very specific thing in our insight. So content you've got that if it's rich enough, even if it only previously would have come up from very niche specific long tail searches, is being utilized by the AI. So taking us to technical SEO, is that important now? If we're talking about content being important, PR being important, is this still critical? Yes, it is, because the AI is still a machine and it likes to read things in a structured way. You know, you've got to have your schema in place. You've got to have your metadata in place because robots don't actually understand what they're seeing, right? So in order for them to organize stuff in a sensible way for you and not have a load of hallucinations, you need to help them. You need to go, this comes after this, comes after this. This is related to this, and you have to tell it. Just like we had to tell the spies for Google. So the course for Google. And then Equally, semantic connections. This is the author. This is when the publication happened. Give it all this information, because as more and more tools start utilizing AI, you're just future-proofing your site even further. How are you going to know if you're being affected by this? So we all know a lot of us know our standard SEO metrics. So your agency will be tracking them, or your team will be tracking them. But there's new things to keep an eye on as we move into this new era. Traffic spikes in usual patterns. Referrals from AI domains. You can't quite see it there, but you'll see a lot of Union GA referral coming up, ChatGPT/referral. It's happening more and more and more. Perplexity, Claude, etc., Gemini. So set up Google Analytics to monitor these AI platform visits. Have a specific report. If you want to get really deep into it, review your server logs, but also track your quality mentions and your top AI references. Is the independent still the place that it's citing, or is it moved to something else? You're going to have to do a bit of chasing, work out what is being used. But there's so much we don't know, and I'm conscious of our time, so I won't get into it too much. But does sentiment matter? Does it matter if you mentioned negatively? We're not quite sure, because unless you ask it, was it a good insurer, just who is the car insurer, then those are two different questions. Does it know the difference? We talked about, is it worth you just spam a load of paid stuff on Reddit? Is that going to solve the same solution? I hope not, but we don't know, that's for sure. How frequently does the SOP source change? How will price comparison sites evolve? What are they doing? I know CTM is already doing some stuff. And then finally, parting points. This is real and it's growing rapidly. Okay, definitely. This isn't sky is falling chicken little stuff. We've proven it. Double down on your digital PR. Obviously that's critical. That's above all the other channels. That's the stuff that maybe might have been third in your list to do. Maybe you should be moving that up to first. Look at the winners in your sector. We mentioned a couple of brands here who are doing really well in this. What are they doing differently from you? Who have they worked with? How are they putting content out? There's an opportunity here. We've had about 50 people on the call today. About 170 people have signed up for it. So you're already ahead because you're thinking about stuff maybe in a way slightly differently from the others. So others will go, it's not really affecting things. Take advantage of that. No one's an expert in this stuff. If they tell you they are, they're full of it. All right? No one is. We're testing constantly. It's going to have to be important here. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And by that, I mean, Google's still getting 80 billion services a month. SEO is still very, very critical and very, very important, as are all the other channels that we talk about. This doesn't mean rip it up and start again. It just means maybe some of your prioritization and an eye to the next couple of years is going to be really critical. And that's that. Oof, a lot of information in 30 minutes. Do we have any follow-up questions? I didn't look in there. If you do, say now if I have a hold your peace. No, I think it's just a huge amount. So just quickly, we'll share the slides afterwards. We're actually got slightly richer slides we'll share afterwards, and a recording of the video for those that didn't manage to make the call today. Apart from that, I'd just like to thank you, Ed. I just really very much like to thank Similarweb for helping us with all that data and their vast tools. I often feel blind when I'm not using Similarweb myself, so it's been a huge help to us. And thank you to Richard for sharing that insight with us today as well.
Fantastic. It was an absolute pleasure to be with you, Alex, and thank you everyone for spending 30 minutes of your valuable time with us.
Okay, have a great day and a good rest of the week.